Hello, this is Pixie to another video. How the devil are you? Just quick thoughts really. I was having thoughts about my own brain, and that if I had see, the thing is, we all have a kind of different layers in our personality, and that make up who we are. But if one of these layers is damaged or affected in some way, these other personalities or whatever less refined elements of ourselves come out. Like, you know what violence is, but you choose not to do it. But the fact is, you know what it is. It's there, and it's template of what you might do. Now, normally, most people don't have too many odd thoughts, but once they're exposed to watching violence and stuff, they have an awareness of it. I don't necessarily think it's an instinct though. Not unless they do a kind of scenario play in their head sometimes, you know. They go through the motions of like how annoyed they are at their boss or whatever it might be, and then where that fantasy goes. Now, I've been in a very stressful environment. I've had that experience. I just felt like I wish I could just push her through the window. Not that I did, but I just had a boss that was like a hawk on me in the past, and she was unliked by the whole department, to be honest. She would like to see herself as somebody who gets things done, but the problem is she was upsetting work colleagues to get them done, so it's not really an efficient method. And she doesn't like it being sort of targeted or sniped at herself. She takes it quite personally. But it's just them dark thoughts, and if your brain gets damaged in some way, like develop dementia, other issues, it could become a bit more predominant. I guess it's why sometimes we think of things like mental health, because it's not just it's not just about, you know, having an experience or the state of mind. It's in the function of the mind as well, and there may be resistance in certain layers people are resistant against. And I noticed for about when I've watched things about serial killers and things, and they're just psychopaths. They've had a predisposition towards something, and it's been there in their mind. They've ignored it, but there's been a breaking point where they just said, I've just had enough of resisting it. They've acted upon the instinct. And sometimes they can be quite ordinary for all their whole life, and then they just have this episode where they got something really strange. I remember watching this thing about this guy who wanted to make the perfect partner, but he wanted to make him, literally. He was like doing a Frankenstein experiment on him, and he basically drugged his partner, and he drilled a hole in his head and put acid in there. And the idea is if he could damage his frontal lobe, then he would do exactly what he wants him to do. And it doesn't really make sense why you'd have an insecurity at that level. And the other thing I was thinking about with karma is that it's kind of repeated behaviour patterns, and they never end. So it's so when you have good karma, you're repeating patterns that elevate yourself. And I guess these become constant constructs in people's psyche. So if you have a trauma, you keep reliving part of it, it'll be there forever. And if we go back to some of these serious criminals, they've had something extremely abusive, and then they're carrying out some other cycle of abuse to other people in order to get back at this one person that hurt them in the first place. But they've basically associated all collective behaviour with that. So, you know, if somebody's got an issue with their, say, I don't know, mum or whatever, and then they've turned on funny on women, but then sometimes it's the point where there's that layer of something that stops them from doing bad things. So they might have a mixed bag in their mind, you know. They might be had a bad experience, like, I don't know, say their mum good days, and then there was very bad days. It's just a mixture. It could be one of these toxic relationships whereby there's highs and lows in it. And it's very easy to punish other people for all the lows, because you don't want to punish the other person, because I guess it's going to the next level. I mean, not suggesting I want to do this, I'm just thinking about the state of people's minds, mental health, and why people carry out patterns of karma, and why it's toxic and it can be abusive, and also you know, what decides positive behaviour, and there's also things like doing things that are not really in your natural program to do. So it could be to abuse somebody in some way, or to turn on them, or to mistreat them. But there might be some things you can easily do. So it's kind of a weird mixture of behaviour. It's a bit like if a stranger said, "Hit me," it'd be a difficult thing to do because you have no reason, and it wouldn't be motivated by an action then. But if somebody could just hit or attack someone, then that's a different story. I remember there was something odd with a cannibal, and he had met someone online, or was grooming people online to look for somebody who'd like to play the victim. And he had somebody who had the fantasy of it, but did he just want to play the fantasy? Because the actual reality was pretty psychotic, really. Because the thing is, once you've got yourself into some situation like that, tied up, it can go to the next level. Ooh. I've got to back off. It's like cutting across all of the traffic. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. You can't always assume people are safe as well if we're going to talk about trust, and it's not limited to any particular sex, really. I mean, if you look at the sexes, the basic thing is, if you're going to hurt someone, how do you most effectively do it? Now, if it physically isn't there, you might find a psychological way to cause someone a lot of harm or set them up. And then the other thing about trust is, I remember watching a video about a police officer, and he had a bondage fantasy, but his was to kill people. So it was a little bit bizarre. I mean, it's terrible, really, because he had a woman that was sort of highly, she had a high sex drive, but she was very depressed about something that happened. Basically, one of her disabled children died, and so the relationship between her partner sort of broke down, or maybe he was getting to a certain age, he didn't feel like having sex all the time and whatnot, whatever she's into, or maybe she's just looking for something new, a new high, like a thrill seeker. So she met up with this chap, and yeah, he just ended up strangling her, and then he found another victim and did the same again. When he said it was an accident, but it could be an accident because she's done it twice. You know, it's like it's an extreme thing. I think he put the body in a suitcase. But she had 5 children, so it's like, why the hell did you do all that? So what snapped? He likes enforcement. He likes control. There's some other layer of him that's corrupted or dysfunctional. And maybe by being a police officer, he felt he could hide some of that. And then there was a point where you couldn't hide it anymore. So there's kind of people has different layers, I guess that's what I'm focusing on. And also there's healthier layers and there's less healthier layers. And the less healthier layers, they deal with the darker stuff, because you try to filter out things. Maybe that's what personalities do. They deal with filter. They're set up as filters to deal with situations and modes of thinking. It's a bit like I'm aware that I've got certain filters that are they call them other names as well, like avatars and things, but they don't all speak. They don't all have the capacity. They don't have capacity. They just, I guess, they communicate differently, like images and things. He's also playing to being things that could be more metaphysical in that they're spiritual constructs, like a guide level, like something's showing me this image in my mind or solution, or it's the Big Bang moment where you suddenly the light bulb gets turned on. You have a brilliant idea. It's probably presented by another part of your mind that's set up as one of these kind of characters that don't communicate. So it's almost like autistic sort of construct. That was terrible. There's some terrible drivers tonight. A guy tried to chop up in front of me. I chopped up some guy. I stayed back because it was a hazard, and then I moved on. I wasn't going to give way because he shouldn't even be there driving like that. And then you got that guy. He just does some sort of maniac spin in the road. So yeah, emotional side, like when people are very angry. And another thing of diffusing people is that you know, they can't have a sort of controlled conversation with somebody if they're that angry, because the anger wants to be, this other character wants to be physical, and it's being denied that because it's being verbal, and the verbal is channeling the energy. It's like saying, right, we need to do this. So it's kind of this control grid. So you've probably got like master personalities if we got to look at different layers, and you've got these subtle subforms, and they make up your spectrum of who you are, basically. And the spectrum probably could be found in personality types as well. And you can try to manipulate them, but then you might create other personalities that don't actually, like, you can act out in a particular way, but you can't necessarily think in a particular way or do something. And then I was thinking also about the spiritual side of things, is that if people's souls were put into a spectrum, that as they decay, they might become like the memories, you know, like they say, reliving memories. There could be like the spiritual layers of that character. It could be that some of it's been absorbed by somebody else. So there could be spiritual decay if you remain here, but you might exist elsewhere. So you're more in sort of connected to the source. And I think also, when I said the problem with life and death is that at death there's unity, but you lose your identity. And in life it can be challenging because you might only be yourself, feel that sense of aloneness and separation. But this is a refinement of being a person, or being, you know, that soul. I mean, not everything works out in your favour. We want into a network, like a hub, and that way you can transfer some of this energy. Maybe there's a lot of things happening in the background we're not aware of, like feelings, transmitting feelings to other people, subtle thoughts, ideas. You know, when you're in a group of people and they pick up your ideas, and detachment can sometimes cause some issues with people, I guess. So I don't know what to think of this video. Memory layering, personality layering, multiple personalities, multiple characteristics, I guess. Spectral analysis. I guess through hypnosis you can get into these different characters. Some just want to be born into a form. They just exist in the waiting, basically. Alright, this is Pixie sign off. Have a great one, and speak to you soon. Bye.